All right, looks like we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Amplifying F-sharp episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the the transparent compiler and FsAutocomplete. But first, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. Amplifying F-sharp is a initiative to help encourage hands-on collaboration with open source development, and we encourage anyone to join and help us with this mission. If you want to get started, you can come to amplifyingfsharp.io and click on Join Us Today. And here we just kind of ask for your name, your time zone, so we can get you scheduled, like what topic you would like to talk about. We could also help if you have any specific issues, what kind of work that you or a project that you would like to help work out on, or if there is something that you've really done in the ecosystem that you'd like to display and show and get contributions for. And then we can see last week's topic. You can see Florian showed off his, this is the wrong link. Look at that. Florian showed off his Byte Fable plugin. So speaking of showing off something cool that's done in the ecosystem, this is a perfect example of this. We can come to our sessions page and watch all previous sessions. And today we're going to be talking about using the transparent compiler in FsAutocomplete. We also had a session on this previously about the F-sharp compiler team talking about this. If we just look for transparent, we can see it pop up here. And you can watch this session previously as well. This has a lot of good info about the deeper guts of this. And you can kind of get a feel for what's going on with that. But today we're going to be just using this and seeing what this kind of looks like from a usage standpoint. Can we actually utilize this in our F-sharp FsAutocomplete, which is what powers Ionide and a lot of other editors. And so we're going to be taking a look at that. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is actually just looking at where we actually use the F-sharp type checker. And in FsAutocomplete, that is this file called the compiler service interface. And so this is a file that is basically a wrapper around the F-sharp compiler service in its entirety. And so this allows us to kind of encapsulate all the calls that we've been going to be doing to the F-sharp type checker. And the F-sharp type checker is where we get all the nice IntelliSense. So every time you type something, the F-sharp type checker is doing some work for us. And FsAutocomplete is really just facilitating the transmission of these characters from VS Code over the language server protocol. Also, a previous session, if you would like to watch, is also about FsAutocomplete and how it works with the language server protocol. You can see that session about FsAutocomplete. And we will look at doing with the F-sharp transparent compiler. Now, the way to get started with the F-sharp transparent compiler is it's kind of an experimental feature. And so what you have to do is you have to turn it on explicitly. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to end up coming into our compiler surface interface and turning it on explicitly. We'll just turn it on. And so this is only part of what is going on with what you need to do. There is also a new API that we have to hit explicitly to be able to make this work. We will take a look at that. But the first place to probably make this start working is in the type checking context. And so we kind of look for, is it parse and check? So the main call for most of these things is this parse and check file and project. And this thing has a lot of information here, which is the file that we actually want to check. There's some version about it. I'm actually going to, that's what I want to do. Actually want to make explicit. So that's some version number. We have some source text, which this is another F-sharp compiler construct that allows us to kind of say this is how this is a file, and this is how you get certain areas of the file. And so you can see that this may have things like getting the line count, get a specific string at a certain index in that line count, maybe get a range so you can have subsections of things. Some F# project options. This is the thing that is probably one of the hardest things to actually get out of all the .NET tooling. And so this is basically allows you to know like where your references are about dependencies on other files and such. And so I think this will come into play here soon. This should cache is about more or less doing our own caching. F# compiler service does allow some type of caching, but we FsAutocomplete also do our own level of caching to power like IntelliSense. So every time you type something like async dot, like this is why it's kind of snappy, is because we're actually caching a lot of these type check results. And so you can get a lot of this faster than asking for the type checker to give us type check result and things. Like when you're typing like this, it's unlikely that other files are changing. So the main call that we're going to be looking at here is this checker.parse and check results in project. And you can see it looks very similar, except we're just wrapping caching around this, more or less. But the checker now has another overload, which takes a file name, a project snapshot, and a user operation name. So this user operation name is some like older tracing mechanics. I don't know if they're going to still be using this in the future, but it's more or less for, I think it was used more for tracing, but now we have open telemetry in the F# compiler, so may not need to use this as much. So we know we have one of these, the first thing here, which is this path, but what is this project snapshot? I don't know. Let's actually go take a look at the source code. So let's just look for project snapshot and see if we find something that's useful here. And so we look at the F# source code. This is actually just pulled from main, so this may be actually different from what we're actually operating on. But we're going to be taking a look and saying, look, what does this thing do? And so looks like they have a type alias here, so this isn't the one I actually want. This exists somewhere else in this F# project snapshot file. There's quite a bit of stuff in here. So there's a lot of ands. So this kind of makes me think that there's a lot of like recursive things going on here that reference each other for various reasons. It'd be interesting to probably walk some of this, but kind of more or less I'm interested in like, how do I create one of these things? And one of the first things I notice is this F# experimental. So this experimental thing is something as a attribute you can put on your code, and it will tell you that you may not want to use this. We're probably going to get a warning for this, so we'll see that in the future. Also notice that this is internal, and so that means that I can't just create a project snapshot immediately. So hopefully there's some helper method eventually that'll allow us to do this. But let's just kind of quickly scan this and, oh, look at that. There's a static member create. Cool. And so we can pass in a lot of things here to make this snapshot work. And it looks like it needs to take project name, some ID, a list of the source files, which also in turn creates as a whole nother thing that needs created, some references on disk. And so you can see that these are the two pieces a lot of the times that your project file references, which is actually having the source files of your F# code and all the references you need. This is stuff like stuff from the BCL itself, so system core or all the Microsoft libraries. Then maybe you're using logging, so it might be like Serilog or even the Microsoft extensions logging, stuff like that. The other options is basically just a set of things that are passed to the F# compiler itself to tell it how to operate correctly. There's lots of those. I don't know what they all do. Don't ask me too much. Reference projects is similar to references on disk, but this is about specifically projects, and they handle these differently depending on different contexts as well, because you could actually be specifically you're looking at an F# reference, or it could be like a PE reference. And I don't know exactly which cases are which, but I know some of these are basically like, is this an actual C# project? So we're probably going to use the DLL rather than the source code directly, where I think F# references probably use F# code directly to do type checking. If there's something about like what's the type um oh man, I'm blanking. Those the type providers I think also have some influence on what these look like as well. But this is a lot of options. I don't like this. Let's kind of look. Oh, look, another nice little handy helper here called from options. We know that we have one of these. We have these from options. We have this file snapshot, which basically tells us how to get a file snapshot if we actually need that, and then a snapshot accumulator. So it looks like some type of caching mechanism that we can provide here. If we don't provide one, there's a dictionary that they'll do for specifically this call. So this is an optimization for the moment. We're probably not going to use this, but we'll look at these other things, which is giving it some options and giving it a file snapshot. And there's a couple, looks like there's a bunch of different from options here as well. So we'll give this a try here. And so we'll actually take a look and get a project snapshot. There's a from options. And so these, like I said, because we were actually looking at main, might be slightly different because we may be actually not on the exact latest, but kind of gives us an idea of what's going on. And so in this particular instance, it looks like we just pass in F# options, which is kind of cool. And we know that this is returning async, so we need to actually bind on this. So we say snapshot here. Let's pass in our snapshot and then our user op name. And that looked kind of painless. Hopefully this is all we have to do for some things. I don't know. And luckily we also have Chet here to help figure out some things. I can ask him some questions. I'm going to ask him one specific question. Do you think this is good enough to start a test? Or which way do you think we should test? So do you think we should open up another project referencing this built version?
Yeah, I think that might be a little more interesting to the viewers.
Yep.
I was I'm surprised it is that low touch. I expected more work, and I'm sure there, is a longer path towards more work. But like I'm casting my mind to the future and what the next steps are, and I'm wondering like how pervasive F# project snapshot should be. Jimmy, you know this, but like there are a number of places in the FsAutocomplete code base where we store project options and use them as a key of kinds. And I'm wondering if with transparent compiler, we will see more and more and more of those cases move to using the snapshots instead.
Mhm. One of the things that, particularly in large code bases, like one of the things I work on for my day job, is that it's this. I don't know exactly how the runtime characteristics are, but given the word snapshot, and the way that this is running asynchronously and doing a lot of this loading initially, what this seems to me is when we actually call this is what it's going to be at this time. So you're going to get that state at that time. Whereas, unfortunately, the way that the F# compiler works is it seems to do things while you're kind of running. And so, if, for instance, if I'm doing a build on a bigger project and I'm changing things out while you're type checking in your editor, it may have to retype check things. And I'm guessing this is actually going to help with some things like that. Hopefully, we'll see. I think it might also be just maybe we should just see and look where other places we use this checker and just see if it's easy to swap things out if we need to do some things like that. So we also have parsing of files. So let's go ahead and see if we can just change this. Look at that Copilot being helpful. Oh, this is parsing options. This is different. Let's
Mhm.
see. This might not actually be the same. They have parse file. Is there a snapshot? There is an F# project snapshot, but it is not from parsing options. So this might be a little slight invasive change because this is actually going to be a signature file change here.
Now, one
Which
of
I
the
guess there's no
things
reason we could. Yep, go for it.
The project snapshot from options, there were a whole bunch of different overloads. Some of them took F# project options, but some of them took like source text and things like that. Is there an overload that is oriented around parsing potentially here?
Looks like there's just project options,
Nope,
file
all
name,
project
file
options.
info. Nope. Which we derive parsing options from project options, so it's not that big of a step, to be
Mhm.
honest. We this should be a fairly straightforward change as well. So let's kind of do that. Just assume that we get the correct thing here. Do It's going to be like this is not correct. That's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. Now this is complaining about our source or our signature file being different. Go change that to F# project options. And then let's wait for the compiler to tell us where we're screwed up. All right, so two
Jimmy, we've
places
got a
where we do
comment
this.
on the YouTube side that the text is a little
Ah,
small.
oh, okay. Still a little small. All right. Thanks for letting
It
me know.
seems like on YouTube it's streaming at 720p, so up once
Yeah,
or twice
yeah,
would help those
that's
folks.
unfortunately a something we'll discuss. I don't know if Edgar's ready to talk about that yet, but we're gonna
Fair enough.
discuss that.
So while you're plumbing
So
this through, Max has got a question. Max Page has got a question in YouTube chat. How would you go about unit testing this sort of change, or is that based on next steps? I don't know about you, Jimmy, but when I'm doing things like this, I kind of have a phased approach. When I'm in this exploratory mode, I just want to see if I can get something that is mostly working. And so for me, my pathway would be get FsAutocomplete.dll building, open up a separate VS Code instance pointed to that, and just visually inspect. Am I getting check results? Do go to def work? Do tooltips work? Do all of the various sub features seem to be mostly okay? And
yeah,
then because running all the tests takes like a chunk of time, once I have that quick cycle scan that everything is looking mostly okay, then I'll go start the tests and get the full validation. How did that match up with your process?
pretty accurate. The thing here is like this is like almost a pure refactoring step, right? And so like really our tests shouldn't even change, except for like possibly I did some API changes that may need to reflect that. But in like the way that this, because of this thing's kind of complex, we rely a lot on like kind of integration tests in some sense. Like some things aren't as unit testy as you may expect, mainly just because there's so many moving parts that those tests don't really tell you much until you do it at an integration level. And so like this is just a pure like I'm changing some back end stuff. Tests I shouldn't touch the tests as far as I'm concerned, at least in any like major
Yeah,
capacity.
that's a great point. We have kind of two categories of tests, and one of them are like module tests that are pure, that are testing like that a function computes the right thing. But the more interesting ones test against the language server protocol API. They actually start up the server as an LSP server and use the LSP messages to communicate. And so that means that for refactorings like this, these changes are transparent to the tests. As long as type checking is still working, as long as the notifications and events like our public API service from a protocol perspective is still behaving the same, the tests don't need to change.
Let's see. Parse and check project. Does this have a I found one place so far that doesn't have a clear analog yet. This type check recent, but this is also one of these things that I don't think actually works correctly in the F# compiler service in general, so I'm not too concerned about it.
That's an interesting point because like the recent ones, you could keep like a snapshot of the checked, like most recently checked, and a snapshot of the currently being checked, and have this try get recent use the most recently checked snapshot, and that should be instantaneous then at that point, right?
Yeah,
At
there's a
least
reason
based
we're
on
also
what I'm
doing our own
remembering from
caching
Header.
is because this doesn't do what it says on the tin, unfortunately.
David?
How old is the NuGet you're using from the service? Because like 2 weeks ago we added the try get recent.
This is
Okay,
based on what's here.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Can I mean if there's a new one, it might be.
I'll check on that, and if there is a new one, I'll send the version to Jimmy so he can do an update. But
Okay.
I'll let him plow on ahead while I
Yeah.
figure that part out.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go through and knock out all these like variants at the moment. Just see what's going on. Parse and check project. Let's see.
While you're doing
SSID
that,
reload
a little bit of
snapshot.
context, you do want to use snapshot all over the place.
Sounds
Because
good.
if you are going to mix snapshot and options, then you're also like potentially are going to mix transparent and background compiler, and then you're just going to use two different caches. And while it still might play out, the benefit you want is a transparent compiler. So you just want to snapshot everything. And if you do use snapshots all over the place, then the user could easily turn it off and on with a some sort of UX setting. If you then, the constructor of checker dot use transparent, once you use snapshots, it will respect that all the way. So that's where you want to go.
This one. Okay, so basically we're just doing the same thing here.
So there are a bunch of new package versions. There are probably about 10 since I last updated the nightly branch. So we definitely have some room to do an update and pick up any changes there.
All right. This one also has a snapshot, so this one's already async. So let's
In
get a
fact,
snapshot.
Jimmy's on a live share and I've got the link, so I could go ahead and make that change in packet if you wanted me to.
Yeah, let's see if this will work out. Okay, so basically same API. Symbol. Is there anything else here? Just op name. And then there's the parse file again, which is get decorations. So this is also going to become a F# project options for the moment. We're probably have to change the. Should we actually be using the checker directly here, or should we be using this parse file?
Yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't use that helper.
Guessing get decorations is a slight different op name, but
Do we do something? No, we return the same results. Weird.
yeah, I'm sure it's a easy oversight. All right, get declarations. We need to change the API here. This is, and we don't even use version here anymore. Okay.
Okay, I've
Like
updated the
this as it
packet
was.
files, so you're clear to do an install whenever you want.
All right. Let's see what .NET packet install. Downloading latest versions of stuff. Can't get these.
Right? It's probably my fault. The F# core version usually aligns, but it may not have in this case. It does not. Change preview with, or I'll do it.
43 seems high for F# core, right?
It is slightly different, yeah.
That's gonna be the SDS version. You want
Yeah,
eight
I need
8300 something.
80300 something, which I have copied now. And fixed. There you go.
But all right, let's see if we get a build or if I get a whole new fun set of errors. Fun new set of errors. Let's see. From options does not take one argument now. We have to pass a document source along.
Document
Hooray.
source.
Yeah, but you could pass in document source points from file source or something, or from file path.
That takes a source text or something.
No, it's just telling you use the file system.
Oh.
Uh-huh. Yes, this is the
Yeah.
old API thing. Gotcha. Which is something we could potentially change as well. So we don't have to use that file API. So what we're referring to is there's this file API shim. So let's actually just look for the word shim in here.
It's in file system.fs, I think.
Yeah. Oh, so
Oh, you got
the
your own
calls
thing.
to that. Yeah, let's look at the calls to this. So basically the FSHAR compiler, the way that it previously worked is that there's a fake file system that you can shim into, basically allowing you as an editor, because like as a compiler service when you're doing a build, it's just going to read things from disk. But when you're in an editor context, you have files open in live buffers. So like concept, these files may not be actually saved to disk yet, or in some like they may just be edited, and you want to be able to teach the F# compiler use this file instead. So this is the way it works. And I think this document source is the new version of this, but this is the fallback call.
This is actually really interesting because um, if you specify your custom document source, why that would be useful is exactly in this case that we are in with LSP. You can read files from disk if they're not opened, but if they are opened in an editor, a user can be modifying the file content without saving it. And you get messages from the protocol when those changes occur. And so you can, in FSAC, we could have this same concept of like a fused source that for closed documents reads them from the file system like normal, but for open documents merges the file change or the text edit events until the save happens, at which point we refresh from the file system.
All right, let's see. Is there anything I actually need to turn on? Do we have various that's I opened up another instance of VS Code so we can check out what's going on with our build. And so one of the things that we have to also do is, because of tooling fun nightmares, we have some conditionals about which target frameworks you can build against, and we have to set these. Hold on 1 second, my headset is dying. Let me, oh no, do I not have the latest support
Are we
target?
pinning in the global JSON wrong?
Possibly. This is where fun tooling.
Yep.
6 months ago. Does this not allow? Is this just incorrect then?
No, you can't build 8.0. Well, so major will only use major if you don't have any of the 7s installed. If you want it to always roll forward to the most recent, you need to set latest major there.
Oh, of course.
But that will unconditionally roll forward always now.
Okay. Okay. Very fun. Very fun. All right. Yeah. Hold on 1 second. I got to change my headset battery. I am back, and that still did not work. Or
Well, now we're
negative
just getting
error.
actual project warnings. Yeah.
Oh, this is unused stuff. Ugh. Why did you turn this on? We're gonna change that. I should have that here. So one thing I did for viewers, this is there's a warn on. Is this still gonna complain?
Yeah, you
Source
didn't
is unused. Oh, is this
configuration.
thought this would
Weird. We're
be
building in debug mode, aren't we?
I thought so. Or did this not save? Is this one of these weird?
Yeah. Well, no, it's warning on this warning when we're not in debug, so it should be warning on this thing in release mode.
Is this actually building for release? Maybe it was.
Well,
No?
I mean, building for release is not the default.
No.
So
I don't know.
unless we have something
Maybe I didn't
set.
save the file correctly. But okay, now we actually have access to this. So all we want is this string, right?
Mhm.
So what we're going to do here is we actually have for people who are not aware, we actually have this ability for you to swap out the FsAutocomplete DLL instead of running with the normal one. And so that's what I'm going to be doing here is actually changing in the options. This is settings, it's called settings. And I'm gonna be doing this at the workspace settings. So like VS Code has user and workspace settings, and workspace means just the current file directory that you're in essentially. And I'm going to look for FSAC. There's this net core path, tells you all about what you need to do here, but basically you just want the string up to the debug and it will figure out which TFM to run, which is the target framework moniker. And then I'm going to reload VS Code so I can see if we have any fun changes here that we need to make.
I cannot believe that we got away with introducing the word moniker in common usage. Like,
Could be the target framework monkey. I don't know.
what a user hostile word.
And so let's see, are we getting type checks? We get type checks.
Hey, that's great. Go to DefWorks and info panel works and the double slash type hints are working. Like you can see on line 323 and 324 there.
Yep.
Okay.
Good. Type checking across the solution seems to work. So if I guess let's break this. Well, we get, let's see. Yeah, we get
That was
whoa,
that seemed
kind
kind
of
of
disappeared.
why did it
Disappeared.
disappear?
That's a good question.
Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4 different error locations.
Right. I think that
Okay.
makes sense. But why that disappeared is like something of I had that file closed and then when I opened it, it seems to have some
Oh.
interesting type check scenario where when you open a file, it's not using, it's doing something weird.
Yeah.
I think, is this a consequence of, oh yeah, this is gonna be like, this would be fun to track down, like theorizing what this actually is. Like, is this a problem with,
Oh.
because these are actually separate projects, is this a problem with how it loaded the PE reference?
So step back from even reading. It seemed like that cleared as soon as you opened. Like type
Right.
checking may or may not have been redone for this file.
Yeah,
I have a
that's
hypothesis
true.
that the
See,
on documented open handler in the adaptive layer may like trigger a type check,
Mhm.
and that may clear diagnostics to then reset them.
Well,
And
so
maybe
what's
there's a
interesting here is
synchronization
now I'm
issue
like
there.
typing in here and I'm not getting like dependent type checks. And so this may be part of like, is this broken in the F-sharp compiler service itself still, or are we using it incorrectly?
That's
Then like
fair.
that's the hard, because like it looks from what I can discern from just doing this enough, right? Is this seems like that we are using an incorrect like reference to that other file. Like is it looks like it, but I saved that file, so it's weird that it would be not on disk. So that's
Vlad
what's
has a question in chat. Are we
uh
representing project to project references via the PE reference union case or the F-sharp reference project one?
yes.
Which I'm pretty sure it's project references. Like this would be in the like
Generally.
iodide proj info project to project F-sharp project options
That.
mapping code that we have.
Right. Let me grab that. Let me open that up. Yeah, it's under the FCS mapping here, and this thing. One of these is like the actual one that we use. Map many options, I think here is this.
We've got make F-sharp project reference as a function that actually encapsulates, well, like in this file.
Make project reference. This thing, yeah.
So yeah, we should be, F-sharp reference right there to the target path with a set of project options. So yeah, we are using the project references. That's super interesting. So the diagnostics, like everything that shows in the problem details, comes from a collection. Jimmy, I have a thought. It comes from a collection inside FsAutocomplete that is basically a big dictionary that has a couple, like a multi-level key in it. The first key is the file name and maybe version. I think version is a component of it. The second key is like the category of diagnostics. So like the compiler creates some diagnostics. The analyzers can provide diagnostics. Your build pipeline can supply diagnostics. And these are all bucketed by that category. And when we get diagnostics, those are typically tied to a version of the document. And so what can happen is if the version of the document gets increased, and that version gets increased with basically any modification to that document, the document collection could invalidate itself. So that's a thing that I think could be happening. The cross-project reference checking happens and we register those diagnostics, and then you open the file, which might add that file to our like in-memory caches with a version of something. And then because the version advanced, like the diagnostics get overridden or something. That's a hypothesis. Vlad does say that the project references aren't fully supported by transparent compiler though.
Yeah, that feels more in line, mainly because when editing this file, even if it did do like it did disappear, because that would explain it disappearing. I would expect me, if I did a retype check, it would figure out that that file was different and give me the correct diagnostic after another type check. That's what
Is
I
it
think
doing that?
thing. Yeah, so like this is I'm not getting a correct type check until I save, actually. Like I had to
Yeah,
do like a full save, and like, but just like
that
typing
makes
didn't
sense.
give me. So even look at this, even just typing, it goes away. So it's like, that's interesting.
There's definitely some issue that we've got here. Very interesting. Complete aside here, the snappiness, is that like normal for you on this machine?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Is it slower for other people? Is that the problem?
I don't know. So like we just have the reference of you on this machine, so.
Yeah. I mean, bigger files, it's very obviously worse. And if we find a nice big file, like there's probably the F-sharp compiler service. There's like, I'm sure there's some giant files in here that we could do some type checks, and it gets all a little gnarly. But
So Vlad has got a comment about the potential synchronization stuff, and he says that the fact that it fixes itself on save is potentially related to the fact that the document source is the file system. Walking through that chain, I read that as, okay, because the document source is file system, FCS is going to use our custom file system implementation. Our custom file system implementation does do some amount of in-memory change tracking.
Yep.
So I guess like we have this thing called volatile file, and when you open a document, we read its contents off disk, and then when we get the change events, we apply those change events and increment the file versions and lookups from FCS that requests the contents of that file, try and find it in our in-memory collection first before then falling back to the file system. So I think we have attempted to mitigate. Oh no. Well, it's a funny thing. It might not use the iFile system. I haven't looked at that part of the transparent compiler yet.
yeah, it's makes me
Okay.
think that maybe if we do supply a document source like complete, like a real version instead of like using the shim, like because like I'm fine with getting rid of the shim, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
completely fine, but we obviously have to change a little bit of how we do some of our changes here.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes sense to just
Well, I mean,
utilize the document source correctly.
yeah, that would be my thought here. Like we could try implementing this the file system in terms of this new document source thing.
Right.
So what
And in this
is
case, because document source has a custom, which is basically just like a file name to a iSource text,
yeah,
async option source text,
which is basically our virtual file system dot
yes,
try get blah blah blah.
right. And so if we actually look at the adaptive server state and we go into this is basically doing that kind of work.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, and so our file system then, so we pass in the ability, this is the ability to teach it right here. It's basically saying this takes our open files with changes
Mhm.
and allows us to find that file for our in-memory stuff. And I think this then falls back to the original getting stuff from disk
Mm.
if it can't find this stuff correctly.
Okay.
Is it this one?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
this is.
our file system.
And so then, yeah, we basically have a try find file, and then there's like a call. So this like get content will basically fall back. Yeah, if it can't find it, it'll then use the original file system
Mhm.
implementation, which is
Okay.
the
So we could potentially make a document source that just
yes.
wraps this function, right? Do you want to try that?
Basically, yeah, it's not too big of a deal. One of the things that I'm thinking that maybe we want to consider doing is so like we kind of already have another thing abstracting the project, and maybe it's better to like pass this around instead. And
Mm.
so this can encapsulate that document source and whatnot. Um, but how we actually do that is going to be very, very fun because looking at this is just a record type with some data, but we're actually capturing a function now that's going to be able to look stuff up. I don't know.
No, we could.
I like
So
that.
the document source itself shouldn't change, right? Like we don't change the file system shim mid execution. It's just something that gets set once set. And so if we can express that function of string to async of iSource text option, if we can express that in terms of the A maps that you already have, then you could create the document source once and just use it places.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because the changing part would be hidden underneath the implementation of that function.
Yes. Well, yeah, I guess because like the looking that up part. So yeah, we'd want to be able to pass along a function because that's the part is that we want to pass along a function that does there's because we load a file. Where do we actually load files? We read files somewhere in here. File. Oh, too many files. Too many files. So we actually do like pull files from disk and this particular like here's an example, right? Here's this. So basically it's just this function, more or less.
Yeah.
And we'd want to say uh, kind of then we would return. So what we actually want to return though is the
Source text.
Option. I guess this can just be an async. And so this will give us the file. I guess we'll just make it async option just to be able to knock this out.
And then source text or whatever on that file.
Yeah. Source text. And then I think maybe need to upcast it to this.
So one thing you'll have to do is remove the local path from the file path because FCS knows nothing about that. Which will mean you'll have to forcibly tag it here, and by forcibly tag, I mean you will have to run it through our normalization function.
Yeah, could do that too.
Because like we have to protect every input.
What is that actually called again?
I think it's called like local path to. Oh yeah, there you go.
No, because we don't need to do a URI. Hopefully not. I lost my place already. Where is the errors? Oh no, I didn't make an error. Oh no.
Search for document source.
Yeah. Oh, it's because I'm in a
we'll have to update all those.
Yep. That's what I'm saying is like passing that along is going to be a little tricky.
I see what you mean. So yeah, we should compute this. This is in the state, so it should be a property on the state, and the state is part of the compiler service interface. Is that right? And so we would just flow this through as a parameter.
So that's why I was trying to say, like, we probably want to encapsulate this in some capacity. So I was like, this would be the, because if we add like some helper function to this loaded thing, right, we could get like, we could do like member, I guess I don't want to override here. Let me throw this down here. Like member get snapshot or something like that.
I see, and this is where you would like to
snapshot of options, and this would be x dot options, and then we have to pass in. Yeah, this would be like, how do I pass in?
And you go source and you close source. Yeah.
Or do I pass in? Because at this point it's like kind of the same thing, but like, do I encapsulate it here as like a thing?
I wouldn't do it like that because now you've bloated the size of every single one of those loaded projects.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, for FSAC is only like 10 of them. But again, looking forward to things that we should handle, different configurations, different TFMs. Those are all separate projects. And so you start getting this combinatorial explosion.
And then there's both. So then it gets the get snapshot, takes the document source, right? Now do we want to pass the snapshot into all of our places instead of the compiler service? That would be
Yeah,
the
it just
call.
starts, gets viral.
Yep. Because now instead of just being able to swap these out with very clear cut, we have to pass this snapshot in.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. Do you want to do the snapshot there, or do you want to do the loaded project abstraction? Because
Well, we
like,
still got to pass in so it's either that or yeah, we pass in the document source here too, right?
yeah,
The
601, I suppose.
right, so it's a do we create this to be more invasive here or I guess the other option here is this is itself a type.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible
Yes,
to
this
just
is what I was thinking.
yeah, we can do this
Yeah,
and make this break.
but that's fine because I believe like the compiler service is essentially a singleton. When any of its key inputs change, we sort of recycle the thing. And I believe all of that happens in adaptive server state where you were
Right.
just defining the document source in the first place.
And then this is going to be a
The extraneous, yep.
and then now let's see if I can actually pass it in correctly to where that's being used. Because this now involves this is a very fun little caching mechanism here.
Mm-hmm.
Because we actually don't want to because basically the way that these work is these maps are cached by default. So if like even if config changes, what this is saying is basically if this tuple changes, then do this. And so like if we change a bunch of config options that aren't these tuple values,
Mm-hmm.
pass this along, but now this is
So you,
slightly different.
I think you'll need a different cval for the document source that defaults to document source.file system. And then you can plug that cval into your checker eval
Yeah.
there. And then down below, when we shim the file system, you would update the cval for the document source.
Like document source being a cval itself.
Yeah.
This would be file
File
system.
system or something.
I guess the question is, do I even need because what we're doing here is we have to read these files. Is this something that needs to happen here? Or am I just going to be moving things around? Because really, yeah, I guess I don't. I guess we'll just set it, let it adapt. Let's do that. How about that?
Yeah, we're hacking stuff right now.
Yep. Document source, val. Let's just call it that for now. We'll do the other way. Document source lookup, and then we'll do document source dot value.
Transact.
Yeah, I got wrapping in a transaction here in a second, but this is document source dot custom. Right. Yeah, and then I want to do a transact. Oh, that is not what I want to do. And then you get this. So this will update the document source. So let's go up here. And then now we have to create this. Let's actually just make this a wrapper type here. Oh, buddy, that's too much.
It's just trying to help.
Yeah, it's a little too helpful. I guess, is there a val map 2? There's a map 2.
There is, huzzah.
So this is going to be a just do the thing that everyone hates. So pass in a config, a document source. This will be eval map 2 instead. And then this will be C document source. Or is it actually, it's not tupled. It is not tupled. Then this will be DS.
And then we're green. Huzzah! Adaptive updates with cleanup. And now I guess in the compiler service interface, you can go to those places where we were using document source.file system and replace it with document source.
Already done. Find and replace is a great feature. All right, so then let's go ahead and do another build. I'm gonna close my other VS Code instance for the moment. Got any more fun comments in the world?
You were called a wizard.
I'm a wizard. Oh no.
And also Vlad has opinions on formatting. And we did get a sanity check. The transparent compiler does use the file system snapshot stuff for project references.
So let's see. And then we're letting MS build take its good old time. We need to get some of that cool cat cracking for 8.0Ks.
Now we're talking.
Maybe wait until 80202, I think, next month.
Okay. All right, let's see what happens when I do this.
Yeah, big shout out to Florian for dogfooding that feature pretty hard.
No, the shout out is all yours. Like, you added it, or, in some way, shape, or form, and I'm really happy it exists. It is a wonderful piece of technology.
Does that actually mean we can run MS build things in parallel now? Because we can't do that currently.
Yes, asterisk. The feature is currently, you can only do a single project at a time. Because we haven't defined what the structure should look like for doing it at a solution level and what it should return for multi-targeted projects.
So this time opening it up seems like it worked.
So amazing.
Oh, never mind. It went away.
Oh,
it came back. Oh, was I type checking in the middle? Let's see.
I think you may have been type checking in the middle.
Kind of came back. All right, let me just let it run type checking again. I blow through this. I'm giving it a good stress test with my naive parallelization of type checking.
Okay, so it went away.
Interesting. That comes back. But this still is gone for some various reason. That's interesting. It comes back. I know Vlad did say there's some diagnostics sometimes that don't necessarily work correctly, so I don't know if this is actually a expression
So
of that.
one thing that I'm interested in is with the snapshot compiler, like dependent type checking can be expensive, right? You change a source file midway through a project, you have to type check everything else in the project and then all of the projects that reference that thing, right? Like that's a lot. the transparent compiler, does it make this process more efficient? Does it provide any
This is
APIs
where I
for
think
doing this more ergonomically than the parallelization that you have created?
there's definitely some way. This is what David originally did have some code maybe like over a year ago at this point that
Mhm.
was trying to use the graph based type checking thing and trying to figure out like which files should you actually go and type check. And so that may, I don't know if the transient compiler is basically encapsulating that to do that work. That's something I guess we'll have to figure out during runtime. I don't think we're going to figure it out during this session. Um, but it should be something to definitely check out because I'd be very I'm going to be a big user of that. So, and the rest of my team will be. So I'm sure I'll want to actually check that out, make sure that that kind of works like that.
Cool. There's side chat happening in the Zoom chat right now about how the compiler is memoizing some of these requests. So it seems like we have something fairly usable. There are some maybe quirks about synchronization that of diagnostics that we can dig into. I kind of feel like at this point I would check it in and push it up and see what CI thinks on the tests. The one thing that will be interesting here is we have a lot of tests that assert that a diagnostic with a specific code or message or something exists, and then does something with that diagnostic, right? Like virtually all code fix tests work this way. You have a code fix for a specific problem, and we detect that problem by finding a diagnostic that describes the problem, right? So if there are problems with synchronizing or pushing those diagnostics to the LSP client that is driving the tests, that would cause the test to fail. And that would be a reason to like dig in more into that diagnostics collection that we have. There's also like in another sense, right now we're using what's called push diagnostics, which is where the LSP server is sending diagnostics to the client as they come up. Another thing that you can do is pull diagnostics instead. I think I may be inverting these, which is where the client can request diagnostics for a file at a given version. And it may be like with transparent compiler and the memoization there, it may be cheap slash fast slash efficient enough to do that on demand. Instead of us having to
from what I
handle
looked at
caching
for that,
internally.
from what I looked at for that pull diagnostics, I'm not
Mhm.
convinced a lot of editors support that.
Yeah, that too.
So, that's also like because I went down that road like a year ago and it was like, maybe this isn't as good as I thought it would be because yeah, I had a lot of thoughts that would be really nice to do, but all right, so this is all the transparent compiler work. I'm going to leave stuff commented out just because it's good to show the difference for the moment. Signature file changes. All right, cool.
Yeah, for the
that.
folks watching, when we do things like this, like there will be a phase when we're just hacking things out and you push the PR up and the diffs are huge and there's to-dos everywhere. And then like as part of the polishing, we'll look at that delta on the PR and see like, okay, there's a to-do there I need to go address, or this looks pretty hacky, or I've done this same thing 3 or 4 times. Let me clean that up before we merge. Like this is not the final state. This is the starting point that we iterate on.
That's right. This is one of those we wanted to try to see if there was a update for. But that's good enough for now. Yeah, so Vlad mentions, yeah, due to the more asynchronous nature of the transparent compiler, there can be issues with diagnostics and thread local / async local. And yeah, I'm doing a very naive, like, here are all my dependent files. Type check them, please. Give
Mhm.
give me results. You figure out the throttling mechanism. I don't care.
Well, I mean, just going off of the emails that have been going on, I think Jacob Machoka and a couple other people have been diving in specifically into the thread locals and async locals and how those are propagated across the compiler. There are, on the internals of compiler, there are a few places where thread locals and async locals can get dropped. When you switch over from the compiler's internal like node code backend to proper asyncs. And like Jimmy has reported issues with asyncs losing thread locals in the past anyway. So like there are definitely some pitfalls there, but it seems like folks are actively digging into that and trying to solve them. So I would hope / expect that by the time transparent compiler is like fully stable, that those transitions would have been handled.
All right, let's see. Let me actually go ahead and create a pull request for this for the moment and see if I'm not actually going to care about my. Did I not push it? No, I pushed it to. I pushed it there. Why does it not think that this exists? Is GitHub being laggy today? All right, well, I'll figure that out later, I guess.
Do git status? Origin transparent compiler, yeah. Bizarre.
Every once in a while, GitHub does have a slowness to it, so does it's not uncommon. All right, cool. Well then, does anybody else have any other questions? Anything they'd like to mention?
So Vlad's got a comment in chat. He said, "Not sure I heard you correctly, but when using the transparent compiler, it should not be necessary to figure out how to parallel check files. It's designed for callers just to ask, hey, give me type check for file 123 at n, and it'll figure it all out."
That's my naive approach, and it's going to work perfectly then.
Sweet.
Because basically, well, I do have to figure out the dependent files of the file that you edit. Because basically, the way that this works is when you go to save, like when you edit a file, it only let me find file. It only type checks the current file in your buffer, and then when you actually save it, that's when it goes off and be like, okay, all your dependent files that could potentially be go type check. And so that's where you see like a giant flurry of things show up.
This is where, so the API that's missing from our experience from FCS here is that like one shot, hey, given this file in this project, go type check all the downstreams, right? That discovery and triggering aspect. But yeah, Vlad said our naive thing, like effectively just pushing this thing that you've done down into the core.
Yeah, because there is some people have some different ideas that of different scenarios they like to support, and I supported the case that I cared about. But some people seem to only want to potentially have diagnostics for files that are open and only type check files that are open, which I find like I understand that desire because you may have even larger projects than I work on. Um, but it gives you a false sense because you're not going to find those out till you build. So
The thing that is missing from that is I can see a usability enhancement that you would want there. Like check the files that I have open at a higher priority, and then check all the other files that I don't have open at a lower priority, knowing that that's not exactly correct, because if any of the other files you have open you ask to be checked at a higher priority, then any of their direct descendants would also be checked at a higher priority, right?
Right.
So it's not trivial, but it seems reasonable.
Yeah, there's basically some type of like subgraph priority system that needs to happen. But if someone wants that, they can contribute and they can watch these videos on how to contribute.
Well, I mean, when you look at like VS doing these things, they have high priority threads and they have lower priority threads. And these are just like separate thread pools that have different consumption algorithms on them. The compiler as a one-shot, like standalone CLI invocation thing doesn't need that at all. But the compiler as a compiler server, which is effectively what we're doing in the IDE here, and what like Roslyn can do in its like long-lived daemon mode, has to be more intelligent than that, right? It needs to prioritize better. And so I don't think we could push that correctly down into FCS until the compiler had a sense of priority.
I don't know where I push this to. I don't know if GitHub's having a good time.
I know that
They are not. Somebody in my team reached out, like they're not having a good time.
yeah, they've been under cyber attack. Like there have been a whole bunch of compromised repos, like in the hundreds of thousands, I think was the last reporting I heard. That is just causing a drain on things. So
Okay. All right, cool. Well, then,
dumb question. Did you actually commit?
I think so. I made
Transparent compiler changes.
I really like the message when this Jimmy said about the global.json.
fight with that thing all the time. It's
I
like
mean, so
sometimes it saves you and then sometimes it cuts you, and it's a double-edged sword all the time.
yeah. Yeah. It bites us here. We could remove it for local development, but we do need it in tests to pin the SDK that's used to run specific tests. There's not a good handle for it. I'll talk to the guy who is in charge of that and see if he can do something.
All right, cool. Well, with that, then is there any last questions? Anything? Anyone else? Anyone want to mention? Anyone want to chime in?
I don't see too much happening on the YouTube chat or the Zoom chat. Vlad's got a couple follow-up details that are interesting.
Just before we go, Jimmy, can you mention a little bit F# essentials, maybe?
The F# essentials? You want to give the speech because you're more direct.
Yeah. So if everyone is watching on YouTube or is in the call, if you are starting on your F# journey and you want to learn about F#, the basics and how to get started and getting to know more about the language. So every Wednesday we run sessions with a different topic. So if you scroll down through the middle, we will you can see the kind of the course overview. So next week we will be covering organizing your code, which will be basically modules, namespaces, console application, how to write your unit tests, and all of that. So yeah, chime in next week on Wednesday. We will mention on the socials the time and that, but normally it's 6:30 UK time. So yeah. Also in our YouTube channel, you can see that we have a playlist already with the already recorded session. So if you miss one of those sessions, please go and rewatch them there. Thank you, Jimmy.
Yep. So make sure you can come to our YouTube channel. You can watch all our previous sessions. We're starting to upload to HD recordings because we do have a limitation with Zoom that only allows us to get 720p recording. You have to pay them thousands of dollars if you want a 1080p. And Zoom's very easy to incorporate a lot of other people. I'm sure there's other streaming technologies we could use, but this is literally just download and click go. And so kind of hard to make us change. But yes, so come look at our previous sessions. You can look at our previous lectures as well. Anything else from anyone? All right, I'll take that as the end. Well, I'm glad the session went a lot pretty smooth. Good work for the F# compiler team for making things very easy to transition from old to new. That was pretty painless, and did it in an hour, which is pretty great, and that gives us the ability to test all this stuff real easy. And I will say that'll be it. Signing off.